Hello folks, it's Kissing88 here and welcome to part 2 of Beyond Zelda Technical Capabilities. I'd actually recorded all the content for this video 2 weeks ago, and I was meant to upload part 2 last week, but unfortunately I was a bit unwell and couldn't get round to it. But then I realized throughout the week that there were 2 articulation techniques that I wanted to share, but I forgot to record. So here they are. So one sort of articulation technique I want to introduce to you is called flutter tonguing, and that sounds a bit like this. So you use your tongue to make that sort of sound, kind of like machine gun sound some of you may have made when you're a child, and you can use this for some dramatic effect. So to give an example, here is one of the oldest Triple Ocarina videos that exist on YouTube, which I'm sure a lot of you have run into, by Willy, which I'll just play on screen now. So you can see he uses flutter tonguing to create a bit of an exotic effect. So that's another tool in the toolbox for you to use. Another technique, which is a bit more of an advanced technique, but it's actually not that hard once you get the hang of it. And that technique is called double tonguing. And what double tonguing is it's a more advanced version of tonguing, which allows you to play quicker sort of passages. So in the last video, I shared what tonguing is, which is you sort of go t. Now you can do that faster by, instead of just going to, you go tugu, 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 tugu. And when you do that, you end up sounding like this. And double tonguing is actually compulsory if you want to play some songs. So for example, in Willy's Triple Ocarina video, he uses double tonguing in some parts, which I'll put on screen now. So anyway, that's flutter tonguing and double tonguing, 2 techniques for you to try out. And without further ado, on to the rest of the video. So then he talks about the volume dynamics. So volume dynamics can be created by varying both fingering and blowing pressures at the same time. The pitch of an ocarina varies with blowing pressure, so you cannot create volume dynamics by changing blowing pressure alone. Rather, you must cover or part close a hole and blowing harder to maintain the same pitch. The inverse opening or part opening a hole and blowing more softly also works. So Robert's approach to, I guess, volume dynamics, at least according to this part, is using different fingerings. I don't particularly use this method myself. Maybe I just haven't familiarized with enough ocarinas to sort of memorize sort of different fingerings. If I want to play F a bit softly, I'll use this fingering, and if I want to play it a bit stronger, I'll use this fingering. I think that's a bit too advanced even for me, but I will tell you about the way that I approach it, which I think is a bit more simpler. And what I would do is Basically, when you're playing the ocarina and you want to apply the dynamics, you're playing for an audience of some sort. So you might be on stage, or you might be performing in front of some people on the street, or in your room, or you're either playing in front of a microphone to either record, broadcast, or I guess perform live, and you can control the volume or the dynamic or volume dynamics of your ocarina by varying the distance between yourself and your audience or your microphone. So if you play a bit closer to the microphone, obviously you'll be a bit louder, and if you sort of distance yourself from the microphone, or even turn around from the microphone, you can create the illusion of being a bit soft sounding. And to show you that sort of being used in practice, I'll refer to this video again by Osawa, which is actually one of my favorite videos on YouTube. So let's have a listen to, or let's observe what he does. So the context is he's playing on the stage, the audience is in front of him, but he's also mic'd up. There's a bunch of microphones. Yep. So did you notice how he varied the distance, or his sort of location of him relative to the microphone while he was playing? So at times he wanted to sort of fade out. He sort of moved away from the microphones, and then he approached it again when he wanted to fade in. So that's something to be conscious about, and I find that this gives you some options of playing the volume dynamics on the ocarina. What he talks about here is that yes, if you blow harder into an ocarina, it will be louder, but it'll also bend your pitch out of tune. So that's what he meant by you can't really create volume dynamics by sort of blowing harder like you can do on some other instruments. Then he talks about microtones. So microtones, I guess, are tones sort of. So instead of breaking up your tones into sort of quantified notes, microtones are sort of your notes between the notes. So yes, the ocarina is very good at that, and you can make use of that in your performances. So making use of innate volume dynamic. So this talks about how most ocarinas have all ocarinas have a built-in dynamic. So whether it's a rising breath ocarina where the notes get significantly louder at the high notes compared to the low notes, or you do have some sort of gentle breath ocarinas where the volume doesn't really increase all that significantly. So for example, on my pure ocarina, I guess technically you would class this as a slightly rising breath ocarinas where the high notes sound a bit louder than the low notes, and that's actually quite useful because when you sort of play the high notes, that's sort of where your sort of the climax of the song is generally located. But then you do have some ocarinas where the high notes actually don't get all that loud. So, one example of that is my Panch Alto C ocarina. So this ocarina, it doesn't actually get all that loud at the high notes compared to the low notes. And also you got my Ti Amo bass ocarina. Also, it's a very gentle breath ocarina overall, and I think the high notes are also almost as gentle as the low notes. And that's why many ocarina players, including myself, have different ocarinas that are tuned in the same pitch because they might suit um, uh, certain songs more than the other, depending on what your dynamic needs are in that performance. Varying the articulations, so notes can be emphasized by beginning them with a different articulation or ornamentation, and they can be de-emphasized by reducing notes duration. Short staccato notes create an illusion of lower volume. Actually, that's a very interesting point. I never really thought of it that way. So for example, yeah, so I guess that really works. That's an interesting thing. That's a new thing I've learned for myself as well.